Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again, and this build was a challenge. This was one of my more kind of out there collaborations where it just was an idea to base a build around a few items that I have yet to use and people wanted me to use, and then I had to think of a certain skill and certain setup to make it kind of fun and viable. And what we have here is a Manastorm based Hierophant with the Ivory Tower chest using a Stormfire ring for ignites and an astral projector for some ranged novas. So what happens is the idea is to have a lot of mana because Manastorm will consume all of your mana on every cast and give a quarter of its damage through to your lightning damage. You then have Ivory Tower, which gives you a lot of extra energy shield, as well as some potential mana stacking because you have to then have chaos damage go towards your mana before your life. So you have to start stacking mana, chaos resist, and it synergizes a little bit with Manastorm, but also kind of fucks you over versus chaos damage. Then have Astral Projector to make the Shock Nova a Nova away from you, and of course Stormfire, which lets your Shock Nova, your lightning damage, ignite, and now you can start scaling burn damage and ignite, and it turns into kind of a build that you see here. And I really wanted to make it work with Shock Nova. I really tried, and it kind of did. It was decent for clear speed. It was fairly survivable from a distance. But ultimately, you turn to the dark side of touching Arc and Vaal Arc, and you never really go back. It is just so much better for, well, overall clear, overall feel. And the Vaal Arc button is just the sweetest, dirtiest button you never knew you needed to press when combined with Ignite. And all you end up doing is going around and chasing the biggest, fattest Vaal Arcs your game can possibly muster. This is a triple beyonded, sextanted, harbingered, strong-boxed map, and you can see what some of these Vaal Arcs are doing. They're clearing like screens away and then just constantly keeping up Ignite Prolif, and thus anything that spawns will insta-die as well. Vaal Arc, when comboed with Ignite, just becomes the filthiest thing ever, and it went into a full-blown Arc character at like level 88 or so when I finally tried it out in some good context and some good setting, and this is where we're at. So it ended up being an Arc character, and from here on out, it's an Arc character. So that is kind of bad news and a little sad if you were really hoping it would be Shock Nova, and it still can be. You can definitely go out and play Shock Nova for the majority of this character's life, just like I did from level 28 all the way up to about 88, and I enjoyed my clear and I thought it was still pretty fun, but the single target is just very lackluster, and even with Arc, the single target's never going to be all that impressive. You can see against some of these bosses and metamorphs, if you get a big Vaal Arc on there or a couple of little Arcs that are really quite lucky on their top end lightning damage, you can have some okay burn damage, but it's really never going to be that good, and the Shock Nova is quite a bit worse for single target. So the clear is always going to be amazing and going to feel pretty nice, but to fix single target as Shock Nova, basically impossible, and you just won't have good endgame single target, and I haven't even gotten to endgame in the character yet, whereas with Arc, it's a little bit nicer, still lackluster, but you've also got much fatter clears, and you can see that you just start chasing huge Vaal Arcs in every scenario. This is my deepest delve at about 400 or so. It's not a very comfortable thing to be doing on this character because things run at you very quickly with certain movement speed modifiers, and things can hit you pretty hard, and you don't destroy any corpses. But we were getting through these delves, and it's just kind of adjusting your playstyle, and once again you're just chasing the biggest Vaal Arcs possible, and then it becomes fairly doable and quite enjoyable even. And eventually I'm just chasing these big fat Vaal Arcs for the delve situation, and then also legions in maps, and it's so much more satisfying than playing just plain Shock Nova, because Shock Nova doesn't have that extra button. But you do sometimes feel the shortcomings of Arc, because you have to actually cast the Arc pretty close nearby to you, You can't off range that much and then rely on the chain rather, as opposed to the Shock Nova with the Astral Projector that lets you kind of snipe from the other side of the map. So it is a bit nicer for that, but to be honest, it doesn't really have any comparison to running up to a Legion, pressing Val Arc with your Ignite, and it just is going to shit on the entire Legion and have Ignite prolifs to go with it. And if you're lucky, you can get another Val Arc going after the Legion has popped the first time, and then clear the entire Legion on that second Val Arc as well. So it just becomes a real satisfying playstyle there. And a lot of people are very concerned about Manastorm and Ivory Tower for the chaos damage that you're going to take on the incoming side of things, because every time you use Manastorm, 100% of your mana goes away. Ivory Tower makes chaos damage go towards your mana. So you would think any little bit of chaos damage is going to insta-kill you. Not quite the case. You do have a good chunk of mana regen. You do use a mana flask. And then if you cap your chaos resist like I have, got 75 chaos res, then you pretty much never die to chaos res. I don't think I'd feel safe playing this shit on hardcore, because yeah, it definitely can happen, but chaos damage very rarely is actually killing us in this character. It's more going to be from other stupid situations. And that's just fixable through a lot of regen through the way that we actually built the character with the big mana stacking, which I'll show you in just a second. And then lastly, I just want to show you this little Blight Map example. It did one Blight Map so far, just a tier 11 here, but by God was it smooth and easy with the chains from the Arc, the Prolif from the Ignite, and then the Val Arc every now and again would clean up the entire screen that you had available at the time, as you can see with this one little button press here. It also just depends on what kind of bosses you get and how high roll for your Ignite. So here's my current character. It is level 90, called Awakened Suffering. Based the character around the fact that it was going to be very hard to make the build a thing and kind of put it together and figure out what I'm doing with it, as well as leveling, because you can't actually put this item on until level 80, and that is the basis around the entire damaging portion of the build. So you have a big lightning skill, and then with Ignite chance and scaling things like your deadly ailments, your supports, whatever, you can start to do some good Ignite damage from your lightning skill. So you can see we currently have this much lightning damage. When we consume all of our mana, thanks to Manastorm, we have that much lightning damage, and all of that gets applied as your initial hit for the Ignite scaling calculation. And then we use a bunch of stuff on the passive tree to convert or start scaling our Ignite damage, like some of the Ignite multipliers here, some over here, and that's pretty much it. Our passive tree actually has fuck all anything, because for the most part it's just more worth getting mana and energy shield. But it is based around that, and then our supports here are Arc into Ignite proliferation, so you can actually get a good Ignite prolif going, burning damage, deadly ailments, swift affliction, and combustion. Deadly ailments is the only one that's really kind of worth getting awakened. The rest are whatever, it doesn't really matter. This one just has a little bit of faster ailment stuff attached to it as well. But that's why we do Ignite damage, and before level 80, you can actually start dealing Ignite while leveling. You need 2 Call of the Brotherhoods to convert all of your lightning into cold, and then a 3 dragons or some Hrimburn gloves to let your cold damage ignite. So you start leveling from 28 onwards with Shock Nova, or level 12 onwards with Arc, and then use Call of Brotherhoods, 3 dragons, and then start igniting things from that level up until level 80. It's kind of a scuffed setup, but at Stormfire level, that's when the build really takes off, and that's when it becomes actually pretty good for damage and clear speed, because that burn damage for each time you have shocked a non-shocked enemy starts scaling pretty high once you clear a lot of enemies. But the other big item in our build is Manastorm. When you cast a spell, sacrifice all mana to gain added max lightning equal to 25% of sacrificed mana for 4 seconds. So you can see currently I have 7,600 mana unreserved, and every single time I cast, it will try and apply the amount that you have onto your damage. So you can see 3,600 max, that goes up to 10,000, and we slowly regen our way up to full. But with Cinder Swallow and this node over here, when you have on-kill effects up to 5% mana on kill, you will get quite a lot of sustain throughout mapping. Otherwise, we just have a good mana flask that helps take us back up to full to some extent, so that every 4 seconds at the very least, you can pop off your maximum Manastorm hit. We then use Ivory Tower, which gives you a bunch of extra energy shield per reserved life. So you can see currently with this amount of reserved life, we have 10,400. If I off-click Malevolence, you can see just how much extra energy shield reserving this life is giving us. We go from 10,500 to 7,600. As well as that, then chaos damage is taken from mana before life, and it's a bunch of energy shield. Is it really worth using? Who the fuck knows? Possibly not, but I'm trying to get as many silly items into the build as possible, and that's where we're at. So I regularly am afraid of chaos damage, but I rarely die from chaos damage because I do have 73 chaos res. So that's from minus 60 all the way up to 73, almost fully capped. And chaos res is a pretty damn crucial part of the build if you want to survive chaos damage on this shit. But for the most part, it's not really an issue once you get to this stage. If you'd rather not use the chest, totally understandable. I don't think it's a staple of the build. And speaking of the low life thing, Pain Attunement doesn't do anything for us. It's more spell damage. That doesn't scale the elemental of the sort of ignite portion, so it's not very good for us. So that's why we don't take spell damage, and that's why we don't really care about Pain Attunement. But that's where we're at with the build and the low life stuff. We've got Malevolence on our mana, that's on our life, that's attached to Blood Magic, and a Precision just for a little bit of crit as well. On mana, I've got a Clarity, and then we're just mana storming it up to get a bunch of extra damage. The rest of the gear just gives mana, energy shield, maybe some stats, maybe some mana regen, and it's pretty just whatever gear otherwise. I did craft, I think, everything here myself, and yeah, it's just kind of a bit of a different build to start scaling, because all of a sudden you care about mana rolls, and all of a sudden you care about mana regen, so it's quite a different situation to most of my other builds. Then got a Sorrow the Divine for ES regen from time to time. Just Mana Flask, which is enduring. I'm not sure I strictly need that, but we'll see in the next few days. And the passive tree basically just gets a lot of extra mana. You have this Healthy Mind Jewel that converts these into mana and these into mana, so huge extra mana there. You have 3 Grand Spectrums, so we've got 1 Grand Spectrum, 1 here, and 1 here. That gives us a lot of extra mana. You've got a Watcher's Eye with damaging ailments you inflict deal 15% faster while Malevolence is up. You can do a little bit better than that, but currently that's what I'm using. And yeah, that's currently the passive tree. It's gone through a few little revisions, but that's where we're at. We do have Elemental Equilibrium. Every time we hit with our lightning stuff, it does give some minus fire res, and Elemental Overload for more damage. Orb of Storms has Flammability, Curse on Hit, Crit Strikes to keep up EO. We've got a Shield Charge, Faster Attacks, and Fortified. That doesn't take our mana, so that's totally fine, but every time you Flame Dash, you're using up all of your mana, so you've got to use it kind of with some sort of consideration. And it's a bit of a clusterfuck of a build, I understand, but in the end, chasing those Vaal arcs and the arcs just seems pretty fucking worth with Ignite, though for single target damage, it's nothing at all at the moment. I think the next video showcasing Conquerors and Cirrus and all that, going to be pretty depressing, but the map clear's a lot of fun, and the character's been a lot of fun to figure out, so I've enjoyed myself. And for now, that's all I'm going to say on the character. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.